Hey everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to episode 14 of my Chaos Head Noah Let's Play. The last episode has just made me even more confused. I know I say this every episode, but like I am just thrown for such a loop. So Takumi thought that he failed to save his sister from Shogun. He attacked Shogun who wasn't there. He was confronted by like someone in a costume, and then apparently he got surrounded by a bunch of reporters, passed out, and then woke up in a hospital with the same nurse that we'd had like way back when I first went to the hospital. And I believe she said that I've been in a coma since I think like early October. So like right after the events of the crucifixion murder, which apparently I've been in a coma since like when all those murders happened. But at the same time, I seem to actually have been at the O Tower because there's like all this talk online about the Esper boy, so people know that it was me. I was on TV. People are making fun of him at school. So, oh, and also Nanami is apparently alive because she went to go visit him at the hospital. So it's just a whole thing like, well, like, so I've been in a coma for a month, but also the events actually happened at the tower. I don't understand what's going on at all. I am so confused. So with that, oh, and then also people did see Sena with her sword. So some people are aware of her sword and some people can see it. So like, I don't understand what's going on. We're going to continue on. Also, there was another murder. Forgot to mention that. So much happened last episode. There was a girl who had, I believe her hand was like she asphyxiated eating her own hand, which I think was like Takumi said it was possibly a callback to apparently cutting off Nanami's hand. So was that the girl who was killed? I don't understand what's going on. We're going to continue on. I'm going to try and get some answers, but somehow I doubt it. So let's continue on and let's see what happens next. I hadn't heard any more auditory illusions, but I couldn't bear to spend even another second in the classroom, so I'd booked it to the restroom, and I'd hid there until afternoon classes were over. Oh yeah, even more things. So Rimi is nowhere to be found. And also, he apparently Takumi had a telepathic conversation with the Kozue, I believe is her name, the blonde, young-looking girl who said that we should kill everybody, and that I'm a hero and I'm not a loser. Just a lot happened. It's hard to like keep track of everything. The reason I hadn't immediately headed back to my base was not only because of my lingering regret, but also because I still hoped that I'd get to see Rimi. So after school, once everybody had left, I snuck back into the empty classroom. And there she was. Oh, Rimi is here. All alone in the room, smiling at me as I walked in was Rimi, except Rimi's only here when no one else is around. So, is she just an illusion? Like, before at least Misumi, Misumi was talking with Rimi, so she didn't seem like it was a situation where Rimi only seems to hang out with Takumi when they're alone. So you could say that she's an illusion, but Rimi has had conversations with other people in the world, so it's hard to say. I was hoping you'd say that. This is exactly what I'd wished for. Is this a matter of like he's creating his delusions or coming to the real world like Rimi? He wanted Rimi to show up and she is. But oh, never mind. Never mind. So I guess in this case, the game just always pulling this shit on me. I was the only one in the classroom. Nobody was waiting for me. I made my way to the courtyard. I hope at least maybe he'll get to see Kozue and then they could have a conversation about like what the heck she said before. It was here that Rimi had told me, I'll stay by your side. But now there was no one here. My only companions were the purple flowers in the flower bed swaying lonesomely in the autumn breeze. I grabbed the vermilion handkerchief out of my bag, the same one that Rimi had given me. I sniffed it, hoping to smell her familiar floral scent. But that smell never came. I'd likely washed it once before, and in the process erased every trace of her. It was just a regular handkerchief now. The memory lingered, but Rimi did not. With every part of me crying out to see her. I simply wandered around the school grounds. Holding her handkerchief to my mouth the entire time. I disgusted myself so much I felt like I was going to vomit. Yeah, this feels like this is his lowest point, and that's really saying something. After leaving the school, I began to wander around aimlessly. I didn't care about anything anymore. My fears about being attacked by Shogun or Yua or whoever else had completely vanished. I even found myself wishing they would kill me. As long as it wasn't painful, I welcomed it. My mental state had been completely overtaken by depression. When my gaze happened upon it, the center of Shibuya was so bleak it only served to accelerate my depression all the more. Not a single smile could be seen on the people walking down the street. All they did was scowl grimly at their surroundings. It gave the place a particularly stark atmosphere, one where it felt as if a fight could break out between the passers-by at any moment. Stores that would normally be filled to the brim with people had their shutters practically bolted to the ground. Just by walking aimlessly through Shibuya, I'd already come across a ton of them. I also noticed there were less cars on the road than usual. The jumbotrons that had always blared through the streets were now completely silent. And in their place was the incessant sound of police sirens, car horns, and various cars screeching in the distance. There wasn't a single trace of the mess I'd caused in front of the station a week ago. Even if I hadn't disappeared from the people's memories yet, City's memories may have long since driven me into obscurity. How nice it would be if I too could wipe away my memories. To know nothing, to be ignorant, to remain a fool. I was sure a person like that lived a life full of sunshine and roses.
無知は罪だ。知らない方が幸せなこともあるという人間もいるが、そんなのはただの甘えだ。
I had a feeling Sena had said that to me, but was it really so wrong, being naive? People, me, none of us are that strong. I was always wishing for someone to save me. I couldn't do anything on my own. I didn't want to. I stood in the middle of the road and closed my eyes. The most agonizing thing about all this was that I barely understood what was actually going on. Things like Shogun and D-swords were things I didn't want to know, but I'd ended up learning about them regardless. However, if you were to ask me what they were, I wouldn't be able to answer. I didn't know the answer. Maybe I should just die. Looking to the top of the O-front building, I thought that to myself. If I were to die, maybe my memories would reset and I would get to play again. Hey, a person controlling me? What do you think? This current playthrough is a complete and utter failure. You made a mistake by allowing your joke of a character to grow in levels. You should have made me more like a hero. You should have made me actually cool. You should have made me more sociable, respectful to women, and you should have given me a passionate sense of justice that would allow me to empower the weak. As I am now, I can't beat the final boss. I can't beat the game. It'd be funny if the game just basically kicked me back to the main screen and then be like, you gotta do it again. I can't do anything. Please don't expect me to reset the game. Could I reset the game right now? Is this like, it feels like a fourth wall breaking thing. Like if I actually reset the game, that itself would be like, I'd get some sort of secret playthrough or a secret route or something. I'm gonna save here just in case. I think I'm just overthinking it, but please, I'm worthless like this. Erase me. Because you do have those visual novels, right? Where you've got like this secret choices that you don't even know are choices. I wasn't erased. Instead, I felt the impact of someone bumping into my shoulder. I thought it was just an auditory illusion. Earlier this morning, I had heard a girl version of that line, and now it was a guy version. Who asked for that? I'd rather hear a much more moe voice, an illusion I could actually fap to later. Then again, if they were to whisper something sexy in my ear, I'd get a boner even though I was in the middle of the city.
なあてめえ、西条だな。
どうなんだ、やらせ超能力少年。
この前テレビ出てたよな。ギャラいっぱいもらったんだろ。
ちょっと顔貸せよ、エスパー君。
I opened my eyes. There were 3 men standing all around me. All 3 of them were wearing baggy clothing, and they had gold, silver, and red hair. 2 of them had their noses and ears pierced, and the remaining one just had their ears pierced. One of them was a gongoro, which I thought had gone completely extinct before now. Ah, there's a death flag, I thought to myself. So this was a bump into confrontation kind of death flag, huh? It really was, just one after the other today. Whatever, I don't even care anymore. Just hurry up and kill me. Once you do, the game will reset and I'll be born anew. Do you have a knife on you? Make sure you stab me in a way that I die instantly, alright? I was so scared my legs were shaking. I shouted that instinctively. Though it had been closer to a scream, I didn't care about how it made me look. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. I was lying about not caring anymore. My situation might have been hopeless, but I still don't want to die. One of the DQNs covered my mouth. I couldn't speak anymore. They grabbed my arms from both sides. I stopped resisting. Oh shit, they dragged me to a deserted alleyway no one would go anywhere near, grinning the entire time. So I decided to launch a preemptive strike against the three men. Wouldn't it be nice if this is the moment I got my D-sword? Really? That's your counterattack? I got down on my hands and knees and apologized in a shaky voice. I held out my wallet to them. The DQN snatched it from me.
お前金持ちだな。さすが超能力少年だぜ。お前、いいやつじゃん。俺気に入っちゃったよ。
Still on my hands and knees, I breathed a sigh of relief when he said that. If he liked me, he was probably gonna let me go.
俺らの仲間に入れてやるよ。入会金は100万円な。これ強制。本当はすぐ払ってもらうとこだけどよ。今日の夜までにしてやるよ。まあ、なんか超能力使って見せてくれたら半額にしてやってもいいけどな。
なんか言えよ。
超能力見せろっつってんだよ。
できねえの。
できねえのかっつってんだよ。
I felt a sharp pain jolt through my side. It felt like he'd broken my ribs. I couldn't breathe. I nearly lost consciousness. I was dizzy. Right as I thought that, the DQN's foot came into view in front of me. Then, aiming directly at my face, his shoe shot toward me at tremendous speed. What just happened? I thought I felt an agonizing pain radiating from my face, but it might have just been a delusion. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids refused to move. The darkness wouldn't go away.
だよ、もう伸びたのか？
どうする？このくらいにしとく？
もうちょっと痛みつけといた方がいいんじゃね？あのダーススパイダーの兄ちゃんもそう言ってたじゃん。
Oh, the Darth Spider guy. Okay.
ボコボコにしてくれって言ってた。
こいつボコるだけで金くれるなんて、よっぽどこいつのこと嫌いなのかもな。
And I thought that Takumi's laugh was annoying.
というわけなんで、続きまーす。
俺らのこと恨まないでね。
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to kill them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to kill them. Oh, that sounds like something appearing out of, or maybe that was Sena or somebody appearing.
おい。
Yeah, this
何と
is
ち狂ってんだよ。
okay.
ふざけんなよ。
Either someone came in to save me, probably Sena, or I somehow unleashed some powers upon them.
なんだそれ。おい。よせ。やめろ。やめて。やだ。
Okay, interesting. And hi, that's not creepy at all. Pale evening sun shone through the window of a hospital room. The light, singed red by the twilight, divided the room into two distinct parts, one captivated by light and one dominated by darkness. And what was illuminated by that light? was a bed adorned with pure white sheets. On the bedside table sat a handheld video game console. A number of academic books lined a nearby shelf, neighbored by the muted pink petals of an arrangement of cosmos flowers resting in a vase. The room was neat and tidy. Nothing moved. Nothing stirred. It was a space where time seemed to have come to a stop. The window cut into the evening sky, and by that window was a small figure sitting in a wheelchair. The figure's back to the window, he remained still and motionless. His breathing was so light, and the intervals between each breath were so long, one might think he was already dead. His skin was covered with wrinkles. His cheeks were hollow. His eye sockets were sunken in. His scalp was barren. With these features, it was often questioned whether he should be referred to as a young boy or an old man. His shadow, which he had dubbed Shogun, extended all the way to the door of the room. Wait, so this guy, he calls his shadow Shogun. The world then moved for the first time. The door slowly opened, and a figure emerged from the darkened corridor, stepping foot into the room steeped in evening glow. What? Sakihata Rimi did not fully enter the hospital room, instead choosing to remain at the entrance. Her expression illuminated by the setting sun detailed how the girl had been deep in thought.
もうやめよう。
What?
残念だけど、あの彼は西条匠は消すべきだよ。
What? Shogun remained motionless in response to her
どう
words.
して？
危険だから。
Rimi's voice was laden with grief and sorrow. Her eyes appeared slightly moist.
私が消そうか。
Is she, like, doing this out of the, I don't know, like she senses that he wants to die and she's just like, let's just put him out of his misery?
ダメだよ。
Rimi was unable to confirm whether or not he was actually moving his mouth to speak.
彼にはやってもらわなくちゃいけないことがあるんだ。
Rimi hung her head, then gently ran her fingers through her hair that draped down before
例
her.
えば、あなたは夢に見たことを覚えていられる？
うん。
そっか。私、すぐ忘れちゃうんだ。
できる人とできない人がいる。
できる人はきっとロマンチストなんだね。
すごく長い夢をよく見るよ。見ている間は何年にも感じられる。
私もそうだった気がする。でもそれは幻。実際の時間としては寝ているうちのほんの 2,3 秒程度のものなんだって。夢って心の歌方なの。だから早く目覚めて出ないと。いつかあなたは西条匠に殺されちゃう。
それでも構わないよ。夢から覚めるわけにはいかない。この夢は。
Wait, so like Takumi is like the bad guy in this case? I wouldn't be surprised if this Shogun guy was another version of Takumi. I don't know. I don't know who he is.
完結した夢の後には何が残るの？
Yep, as if I thought I'd get any freaking answers. I'm just left with more questions. My shoulder was shaken softly. It was extremely gentle, and after just one shake, it stopped. Is this Rimi? Did Rimi come in to help me? Oh, nope, that's Kozue. It felt like someone was peering at my face. My consciousness was slowly returning to me. As it did, the pain in my body returned along with it. The smell in my nose was a smell so strong it made me want to vomit. The smell of blood. I felt a tingling around my upper lip. The taste of iron spread through my mouth. Slowly, I opened my eyes. I was in the same back alley as before. I was lying face down on the asphalt, and right in front of me was a small, reddish-brown puddle of liquid likely seeping out of one of the dumpsters. Are the bodies just like, are those guys just like in the dumpster and that's blood, or are they just crumpled on the ground? This girl, it's always the cute little ones you gotta watch out for. Grimacing at the smell invading my nostrils, I sat up. My whole body ached. My face in particular hurt like hell. It was hot and tingly, like someone had taken a lighter and gasoline to it. Right beside me, a girl I recognized was kneeling down and looking at me. She looked like she was about to cry. It was the transfer student, the girl who transferred it to my class. What was her name again? Oshihara? Why was the transfer student here, I wondered. And then the transfer student held out something to me. It was my wallet. Why did she have it? My head still foggy, I looked around. The 3 DQNs that attacked me earlier were now lying in a pool of blood. What the hell? It was like they'd all been one-shot by some OP mob. The faces of all 3 were barely still intact. Were they dead? None of them moved a single muscle. No, was this the 7th NewGen case? Who the hell would do something like this? Had I? The transfer student then stood up and beckoned to me. I was completely pale. She alternated between looking at me, who was still very confused, and the 3 collapsed people. Tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. Suddenly, she grabbed my hand and took off running with me in tow, staggering every once in a while. As soon as we reached the main street, the transfer student let go of my hand. We hadn't run very far, but she was already out of breath. We both fell silent. Maybe the transfer student was just as bad at talking as I was. No, that didn't matter right now. What I needed to do first was figure out what the hell had happened. I'd been being harassed by those DQNs, and then they'd picked a fight with me. Then I must have passed out, but how long had I been unconscious? I mean, she talks pretty confidently in her mind. Okay. I'm gonna go with the positive one for this. There it was again. I'd heard it again. I thought someone I knew was nearby and was trying to talk to me, but I couldn't see anyone that fit the description. Damn it. Where were all of these auditory illusions coming from, and why were they all happening today? I see. It was a delusion. Of course, that included the bloody DQNs from earlier, too. She's like, nope, they are super duper dead. It has to be a delusion. It's just like Seraton, my waifu who lives only in my head. Are the 2 of them gonna fight in his head? Seraton is still my waifu. Nothing's changed on that front. Besides, I don't have any memory of some dumb blonde character named Kozue. Then who's talking? No way. Could it actually be the timid transfer student standing in front of me? When I thought that, the transfer student gave a small nod. Huh? There's no way. What just happened had to be a coincidence. Maybe I'm mistaken, it just looked like she nodded at me. There's no way any of this is true. I'm not a telepath, not even close. What the hell is an unyu? For some strange reason, the transfer student looks sad. Damn it, now even I'm getting somewhat depressed. If what you say is true, Kozue, then prove you're the transfer student. What are your measurements? Oh god. So you can't answer then. It means you really are just a delusion. Well, then just give me your bust size. Just a general estimate is fine. The conversation unfolding in my brain was getting way too perverted. Maybe it was time to dial it back a bit. It is true the new student's chest is flat as a board, so that part's consistent at least. Incidentally, I am partial to tiny breasts too. For some reason, the transfer student's face was a deep scarlet. Her already petite body got tinier and tinier as she made herself small. This is a coincidence. It was just a coincidence the voice and her reaction were in sync. It's not proof of anything. Well, yeah, but I have no way of knowing your actual bust size, and I'm sure you'd just ask someone to arrest me if I tried to measure you myself. Okay, then how about your birthday? Although, how does he have proof of that? He doesn't know anything about her. I guess maybe if he's like, let me see your ID. Well, there's no way to confirm that that's true either. If I could on a whim go up to some 3D girl I'd never spoken to before and ask her, hey, when's your birthday? I would have become a normie a long time ago. When I thought that, the transfer student that had been hanging her head suddenly started fishing around in her bag. She then pulled something out from inside it and thrusted it toward me with tears in her eyes. It was a student handbook, one that was practically brand new. Upon flipping open the cover, I saw a photo of the transfer student's face, the name Orihara Kozue, as well as her date of birth. But out of the three, what had really caught my attention was that the date of birth was the date of birth written there. Sorry, it was November 13th.
嘘でしょ
Oh, right. I should check the name. The transfer student's name, according to her student handbook, is Orihara Kozue. Kozupi.
まさか
Could this somehow not be a delusion? This voice is her? The transfer student, her head still hanging downward, glanced up at me and pointed at my face. Her fingertip was trembling. It touched my hand to my face. The bottom of my nose was slimy. My nose was bleeding. The transfer student offered me a tissue. I took it from her and wiped away the blood, but I was still feeling very uneasy. The transfer student is... Kozupi isn't moving her mouth. She isn't talking, so why can I hear her voice? Enough with the obnoxious speaking style. I can't stand it when people do that in real life. Wait, you can hear my inner voice too?
普通に話さないなんで
Oh, I know how you feel. I'm like that too. When I said that, she scurried around me like a chipmunk, glanced at me, then started walking toward the station by herself. Why? Confused, I followed her. As I walked, I noticed something. There was a stabbing pain in my side. The pain throbbed with every step I took, so I was forced to stop. I gripped my side and took a breath. There were people everywhere. I hated Shibuya with a burning passion. It felt like everybody I passed by was laughing at me. It felt like everyone was watching me. It felt like everyone knew my face. Don't look at me. Don't laugh at me. I want to find somewhere I can get away from it all. I need a place to rest. The energy in Kozupi's voice now is a stark contrast to the few times we saw each other at school before. And even though she doesn't talk in real life, her inner voice has energy to spare, to say the least. Being able to talk to her in my head is convenient, but at the same time, it's kind of annoying. Come to think of it, I'm accepting this stuff pretty easily, despite the fact I'm not sure how the hell it actually works. Is this really a genuine real-life psychic power? I'm not bothered by the fact you're not normal. It's just that I've met all kinds of weirdos recently. But you, Kozupi, you talk kind of funny, sure, but you're not scary, and you're not Denpai tier, or Denpa tier. If anything, I prefer this. As we walked, Kozue suddenly burst into tears. Startled, I hurriedly gave her back her tissue. After bowing to me way more times than she needed to, she took the tissue and wiped the tears from her eyes. Back to what I was saying earlier. It feels really weird and also makes me pretty uncomfortable when people can hear everything I'm thinking. That's my honest opinion about it.
そうだよね。ごめんなさい。でも、聞きたくなくても聞こえちゃうの。
That's gotta be an annoying ability. I think of all, like, if you had a power, that would be the one I would want the least. Is that so?
そうなの。
Well, either way, I know you don't want to be told that by an otaku freak like me. I was right. A disgusting guy like me really is worthless.
そんなことない。
Just as I was about to revert to my depressed state, Kozue shouted at me with her inner voice.
ダメだよ。そんなこと言っちゃ。そんな悲しいこと。
Tears started to trickle down her face once again. Why are you crying? Do you feel sorry for me? If so, there's no reason to. I mean, look at me. I'm so utterly delusional I create personalities inside my head and treat them like they're actually real people. For example, there's Rimi.
それって先畑さん。
Okay, so that's confirmation that Rimi is real, which I figured she was. It's that she's interacted with Kozue and with Mashima? Mishima? You know her?
だってクラスメートだよ。西条くんの彼女さんなのら。
Like hell she is.
あ、違うの？てっきりそうだとばっかり思ってた。
Kozue knows who Rimi is, which means Rimi is real. She isn't a delusion. She isn't someone I made up in my head. Rimi really is real.
そうか。
Well, that's one good confirmation. Like, I had a feeling. I definitely had my, you know, my moments where I thought she was just some sort of, like, personification of Sarah or something, or she was made up. But the fact she does interact with the world. But the thing with that Shogun, that threw me off. I'm so happy. But if that's really true, then why hasn't she contacted me a single time? Maybe the O-Front incident really did make her fall out of love with me.
先畑さん、地震があったあの日、青い顔をして早退して行っちゃったのら。それ以来、学校来てないよ。
Yeah, right? Why does she have to be the one to reach out to you, Taku? Why don't you go reach out to her if you want to be a friend?
もしかして家族に何か悲しいことがあったかも。
Is that so? It felt like I'd been saved. Now that I knew Rimi hadn't abandoned me, I genuinely felt like I was about to burst into tears. If it's really true, if Rimi really isn't a delusion, then I actually have a reason to go to school. To see Rimi again. So until I see her once again, I'll try my hardest to...
気をつけてね。
Oh, that's right. Didn't she say something about how, like... Did she say, like, Rimi was, like, not to be trusted? That was definitely one of my delusions where they fought. Huh?
西条くんが先畑さんと付き合ってるって思ってたから言わなかったけど先畑さんには気をつけて。
What do you mean?
先畑さんはよくわかんないのら。
Again, what do you mean? What do you mean I don't really know her? What do you mean, because of the crucifixion? Or is it that even though I'm supposed to have been classmates with her since first year, all my memories of her are missing? It's true, Rimi still is a bit of a mystery to me. But she saved me over and over again. Whenever I'm scared, she tells me that she'll stay by my side. She's not my enemy. For some reason, Kozue looked a little bit unstable.
そんなに一度にいっぱい考えられると。コーズピーついていきにゃい。
Sorry. This is just pretty new to me. Whenever I have a conversation with someone, I always end up not being able to say even 20% of what I'm thinking before it ends. But when it comes to this mental stuff, I guess I can't help but talk too much, because I think too much. Ah, same. She would hate to be inside my head. Never stop. Thinking a million things at once. I guess that kind of applies to you too. I never would have expected you to talk so much inside your head, that is.
喋ってるっていう感覚は薄いよ。考えてるだけ。それが流れ込むだけ。相手にはビビーって、相手からはドバーって。慣れてないと自分の思考と相手の思考がごちゃごちゃってなって、にゃーってなるの。
In Japanese, please. I can kind of understand what you're going for, though. I think you're trying to say you don't have the real subtlety or nuance of actual conversation. There's nothing like, for example, looking at the other person's expression and then deciding you're no longer able to bring yourself to say what you wanted to say because of it. If people's thoughts just leaked out wildly, then you'd no longer be able to read the room. The transmission isn't one way, but if it isn't two-way either, it's like having to pick one arrow out of an avalanche of other arrows, all of which are flying in different directions, all while somehow ignoring all the other ones you didn't need. You have to tune out the excess noise.
だから気楽だし距離感も近いけど傷つくことも簡単なの。
For a moment, Kozupi's expression clouded a bit, but not long after, a tearful smile arose on her face.
西条くんは初めてなのにすんごく上手だよ。コズピーとビビビが合うの。
Beep beep beeps? Are you trying to say we're on the same wavelength?
そう波長。
Well, I guess it's probably because I do something similar with serotonin pretty often.
でもあの時の西条くんは怖かったの。おぴー。
Back then?
今日の朝教室で。
Oh god, that reminds me. I think I had a really stupid delusion this morning.
だからうひゃーって思ってつい声をかけちゃったのら。本当はなるべくこの力を他の人に知られないようにしようって決めてたのに。
Wait, you don't understand. Back then I was just really desperate and, at the end of the day it was just a delusion. Who am I kidding? You probably hate me.
きっとそれを本当にやってたらコズピーは西条くんを殺してたよ。
Oh, okay. Huh? I thought you said that we had to kill all these people. Now you're saying that... Wait, I'm so confused. You're saying you would have killed me right then and there? She'd said such a disturbing thing so innocently. The contrast between the two extremes sent a chill down my spine. Remaining silent, while still communicating in our heads, the two of us passed through Center Guy and came out on... how do I not keep that... Like, how does she not read my mind about me being like, this girl's insane? Came out on Ino Kashiradori. From an outsider's perspective, did the two of us look like a brand new couple, walking in silence without even looking at each other? Yeah, you gotta be careful what you think in your head. Kozupi let out a crazy loud gasp next to me. Her eyes went wide and she looked up at me. No, it was just a random thought. Random thought.
まだふひゃーってさせられたのら。西条くんにラブ告白されたかと。
Sorry. I knew it. It really does suck trying to think when someone's listening to every thought you have. Whenever I was talking to Kozupi, it would probably be better for my overall health if I avoided any unnecessary delusions as much as possible.
聞きたいな。先週の西条くんがテレビに出てた時のこと。
Even if I told you, you wouldn't believe me.
それ決めつけ。うぐー。コズピーはあの時下にいたんだよ。
Down below.
スクランブル交差点、ハチ公口の改札前、ちょうど通りかかって。あの時ずっと声聞こえてたよ。西条くんの声。ナナミさんを助けたい、助けなきゃって聞こえたよ。
Did my inner voice really reach that far? It's a surprisingly long way from the roof of O-Front to the ticket gate at the station.
それだけあの時の西条くんの思いは強かったのら。
I guess Kozue really did understand. I didn't cause such an uproar because I was planning to show off my ESP.
だから価値はなくないよ。なく
But in the end, it was all pointless. I put my own life before Nanami's, and at the very last second I escaped. Kozue stopped before the entrance to Roft, and then while pointing at the entrance, she looked at me. This must have been where she wanted to take me. I didn't think there would be a place to rest inside Roft. It was a small cramped spot that was filled to the brim with customers. My legs were unconsciously shaking. The cheers and shouts I'd heard that night at Scramble Crossing resounded inside my head. I don't want to go to places with lots of people. Once I go inside there will be nowhere to run.
大丈夫だよ。
In spite of how afraid I was, Kozue marched on ahead, ignoring me. I had no choice but to follow her as fast as my legs could take me, trying my best not to look at my surroundings. As we got on the escalator, Kozue looked back at me standing behind her. She was standing one step higher than me, putting us at about equal height.
ナナミちゃんは助かったんだよね。だったら西条くんが頑張ったおかげだよ。
Also, I want to talk at some point about this coma that I've apparently been in. That's been kind of glossed over. My power isn't what saved her. I might as well have done nothing at all.
屋上から手を伸ばしてたよね。何をしようとしたの？ぴょーんって飛ぼうとしたのかな？
No, I was trying to get the sword. It was a delusional sword, and it blended right in with the scenery I saw from the rooftop.
ディソード？
So she knows about D-swords too, of course she does. A D-sword. I was told I could reach out and grab it, but I couldn't. He's probably gonna be like, wait, how do you know about D-swords?
なんで
I shouted that aloud without thinking. A couple passing by in the escalator gave me an irritated look, and I frantically slapped my hand over my mouth. Kozue, how do you know what a D-sword is?
コズピーも持っているもん。
As soon as we got off the escalator on the 5th floor, Kozue casually raised her right hand above her head. It was like she was trying to shade herself from the radiant glare of the sun using her hand. Wait, she's just gonna make it appear? Okay. As if it were running along her hand, light suddenly appeared in the air. No, it wasn't light. It was closer to lines. If I were to describe it, it'd be similar to wireframe. Countless rays of light intersected in the seemingly empty space before eventually forming a shape akin to that of a snowboard. And then several streaks of blue light, more fiercely brilliant than any of the wireframe lines, ran across the entirety of it. Kozue then clasped her open hand. Damn, there's the stereotype of little girl with big sword, big weapon. Immediately following this, what had originally been wireframe, appearing as though a texture had been applied to it, transformed into a massive, solid, seemingly cold to the touch metal plank.
ディソード
Okay. We picked the positive one last time, let's go with negative. The shape was far too different than the one Sena and Ayase possessed, and yet, even so, the aura about its body was the exact same. It was too sinister to be called a board. It was too unaffected to be called a sword. It possessed a pure, unadulterated savagery, one which intermingled with its destructive nobility. She held it in the air with incredible ease. Why does Kozue have a D-sword?
ってコズピーは
With an innocent smile still on her face, Kozue looked back at me.
将軍さんの手下だもん。
Oh, Shogun. Shogun's hence, well, we know that Shogun is after me, and Rimi is apparently working with him. And the gigantic snowboard-esque sword flashed as if cutting the air itself to ribbons. And I... okay. I had no idea what had just happened. Before I could even react, it was all over. Bad end. Kozupi's small body embraced the D-sword, and clinging to that sword was a sticky substance. Blood.
バイバイ、たくみさん。
I I know I picked the negative delusion, but still, and in the very moment, my body had been permanently disfigured. But it's not being all wavy, so I don't know if this is actually happening. I nearly collapsed, so I tried to step forward with my right leg to stop myself. But my leg wouldn't move. The sensation in my lower body had disappeared. I felt a blistering heat around my waist. Can't trust these bitches, man. Can't trust any of these girls. I fell forward. I couldn't move my body. Confused as could be, using only my hands, I pushed myself slightly upward and looked toward my body. Blood was gushing out from my side. Slimy, protruding intestines glistened in the light. Pink flesh clung to exposed white bones. It was a body that had been bored out, one that couldn't be mine.
嘘でしょ
Unable to believe what I was seeing, I looked up at Kozue, staring at me with nothing but raw disdain in her eyes. Kozue took the D-sword dripping with my blood, and then, almost as if she wanted me to watch, she took her adorable tongue and slowly— oh, don't tell me she's licking up the blood— licked away the crimson. Yeah, I knew that was a delusion, but still. Wow.
う
My delusion made me feel really sick. But that didn't mean that the delusion wouldn't become reality. Assuming the worst, I distanced myself a little from Kozue, preparing myself to bolt at any time. Ugh. So I can't trust the delusions even when they're all wavy and stuff. Sometimes when they're not wavy like that, it means it's actually happened no matter what I choose. But sometimes in that case, it didn't happen at all. Completely oblivious to what I was feeling, Kozue waltzed around the sword like she owned the place, her footsteps light and bouncy. She didn't even attempt to try and hide her sword from the people around her, acting as if it were the most normal thing in the world. It had been the same with Sena. She had also been lugging around a gigantic sword in the middle of Shibuya with no regard to the people around her. Kozue was way too calm. Even if Kozue didn't say work for Shogun, she was still definitely crazy. And what I remembered was the smell of blood. I remembered the scene of the DQNs lying in a pool of blood.
あんなひどいことする人たちは死んで当然だよ。プンプン。
So they really were dead?
生きてる価値もないけど、あんなゴキゴキな人たちは
Cockroaches.
ゴキブリ？はあ、殺したかったな。
I could feel pretty clearly where Kozupi's mind was when she said that. There was not a trace of malice within her. She just wanted to take revenge on the bad people who had wronged her. And I didn't think there was anything inherently wrong with that.
最近渋谷はますます物騒だよ。昨日も怖そうなゴキゴキ男たちに拉致されそうになっちゃったから、ドカドカドカーンってしてやったなら。
This girl honestly seemed pretty twisted, albeit in a different way than me.
西条くん、こっちです。
Kozupi began to walk, her gigantic D-sword still in hand. She was pretty short and her arms were really thin. She didn't look like she could even lift a feather. And yet, despite all these things, she didn't show any signs of her sword weighing her down. In fact, her steps were light and springy. I covered my eyes again and again, each time the tip of the sword nearly collided with passing customers or products on display. Miraculously, though, it didn't end up hitting anything. So sometimes people can see the sword and sometimes they can't. In Sena's case. We then arrived at a staircase. It was dimly lit, and unlike the rest of the floor, there were no signs of anyone around. No one even approached the area. I didn't expect to find such a desolate spot inside Roft, a ridiculously popular store, especially since it was only a 5-minute walk from Shibuya Station.
ロフトだけじゃないのだ。デパートの階段って全然人がいないの。
You only moved here a few weeks ago, and I've been living here for almost 2 years. How exactly do you know about this? But I didn't.
コズピーは東京に来てから毎日渋谷を歩き回ってたのら。それで見つけたの。憩いの場所だよ。
Kozupi, seemingly in a good mood, sat down on the steps. She then casually laid her D-sword down on the floor. I had a pain in my side that was becoming unbearable, so I decided to take a break as well for the time being.
それで景色とか模様とか見ると別のものが見えたりしないかな。ゾウさんとかウサギさんとかライオンさんとか。一番おーって思ったのはオオサンショウウオさんに見えてた時。
What in the world are you talking about?
理想度の話ですよ。うっぶー。何かの模様とか景色とか見ると動物さんとかいろんな形に見えることがあって。
Oh, you mean that? Yeah, I've experienced that before. When I was looking from the perspective of the O-front rooftop, I saw something. I saw a D-sword blending into the scenery.
はい、ピンポンです。コズピーが最初に見えた時はハムポンポンが死んじゃった時。
Ham Pom Pom?
小学生の時飼ってたハムスター。ほいでハムポンポンのお墓を作ってあげようって土手に行ったのら。でもスコップ忘れてお墓作れなくてうみゃーって泣いていたら、お空にこの剣の形が見えた。それからはいろんなところでよく見るようになったのら。
How did you actually get your hands on it? In the end, I found my sword, but I couldn't take it. No matter how hard I tried to reach for it, I couldn't grab hold of it.
ただ願ったんだよ。
You wished for it? Like what? That you could have it? But if that's what you did, then I did the same thing. Stopping my thought in its tracks, Kozue looked up at me and shook her head faintly.
違うのら。願ったのはね、殺してやりたいっていうこと。
Oh my gosh, this girl. Her inner voice echoed clearly in my head. I hadn't misheard her. She'd said it very clearly. Kozue wished to kill, and she'd been beaming as she said it. The stairs leading up from the 5th floor to the 6th were very quiet, with only the faintest background music leaking in from the restaurant. Neither one of us said a word. The sound of someone breathing entered my ears. Was it hers? No, it was my own. A staircase where no one else would ever approach. A blind spot in the heart of Shibuya, a pocket of air. I swallowed back my saliva in an attempt to wet my increasingly dry throat.
そう願いながら、ミューって空見たら、また剣が見えて。
Is he thinking like, man, I really wish I hadn't isolated myself from this insane homicidal girl?
でも、その時まで剣とは思ってなかったよ。なんだかガキーンってしたものって思ってた。あれでブーンってやったら殺せるかなって無意識に手を伸ばしたら本当につかめたのら。
And then what happened? What did you do after that?
殺そうとしたけどできなかった。コズピーの力じゃ半殺しにするのが精一杯だったのです。
Who are you trying to kill? Are you just killing indiscriminately? I mean, she says about how she can't stand bad people, so does she see herself as like a very black and white, like bad people deserve to die? I wonder if she was like bullied a lot because she's a very quiet, withdrawn kid, and so she wants revenge on bullies and bad people. This girl, it's like she's broken. Like, I'm trying to remember what happened at the very, very beginning. I just remember she was really sad. She was burning stuff in a fire, and her mom was like, oh, we're going to be moving to Tokyo. But there's not too much backstory other than that. Something obviously happened to her when she was younger. The way she gazed lovingly at the sword resting beside her, I could tell she had absolute faith in it. Something her heart told me as well. Would I have to become this broken in order to get my hands on a D-sword? Dude, I think you're pretty broken, as is. Was I still not broken to begin with?
この剣が怖くて仕方なかった。
That was what Orihara Kozue had thought before she came to Tokyo. Alright, here we go. But now it was different. Now it had become something very important. Something entirely irreplaceable to her. This sword, if I have it, then I won't be afraid. The sword will protect me. The sword is my heart, another me. It had been about 3 weeks ago when she first begun to think so. Ever since she was a child, Kozue had the ability to hear the inner voices present in other people's heads. As to when she had first become aware of it, she could no longer remember. I must be crazy. I must be really sick. These thoughts pervaded her mind as she sought to understand. Even though she was very young at the time, Kozue knew her power was something no one could know about. Thus, she concealed it from her parents. Her powers rendered her unable to make friends, forged a rift between her and her family, and made the people around her think she was merely a girl with ridiculous intuition, one that gave them the creeps. Even when she came to Shibuya, she had still been afraid to go to school. She didn't want to meet anyone new, nor talk to anyone. She thought they would just be creeped out by her, no matter what she did. She did not go to school on the day she was first supposed to, nor the next day, or the day after, instead choosing to wander about Shibuya during the morning. There was no doubt Kozue's parents had been notified by the school, as the staff must have noticed that Kozue had been absent without prior notice. And yet her parents had said nothing to her. It would be understandable for people to mistake her for a middle school student, but unlike the countryside where she used to reside, there was no one around to rebuke her as such when she walked the streets on weekday mornings. Man, you gotta think how tough that would be, like living in the countryside to hear people's voices and then moving to some place like one of the most populated cities in the world. Hearing all those voices constantly would drive you mad. It had been several days since she had first begun wandering around Shibuya. In that time, she had found a place to relax, the stairs within the local loft. It had become routine for her to sit there and stare off into space. This routine remained true on that day as well. After spending nearly 4 hours there, evening broke and she left Roth to return home. Raindrops fell from the dark gray sky. Kozue did not have an umbrella, and yet, without looking up at the sky, nor once fretting about getting wet, she timidly stepped out into the rain. At that very moment, something entered her field of view. Oh, the world is ending. It almost looks like Takumi, but like older? A sign with that message written upon it, sodded by the rain, the handwriting had blurred. The person holding the sign was a lone, lifeless, homeless man sitting on the side of the road under the pouring rain. His head hung downward so none could see his face. Perhaps he was dead. That's person. Seeing him as though it were a mirror image of herself sitting on the stairs, Kozue ceased her stride. For just a moment she hesitated. He was a stranger, a homeless man she had never seen before coming to Tokyo. Just the mere sight of him brought a feeling of revulsion. If I talk to him, what if something terrible happens to me? Such anxieties pervaded Kozue's mind. But what was far stronger than the anxiety was Kozue's strong urge to kill the man. Damn! It was an all-too-sudden impulse, one that struck Kozue with the feeling that if she went through with it, she would be killing herself as well. And so after hesitating for one moment longer, Kozue sent the man the voice of her heart.
世界は終わるの?
The man's shoulders twitched. He was not dead. Slowly he raised his head. His cloudy eyes peeking out from between sodden bangs looked up at Kozue.
ああ、終わるよ。
Kozue's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Not at the fact he had just confirmed the world was ending, but that the man had replied at all. She had not been expecting a reply. The person to whom she would send her inner voice to would rarely respond well. Instead, they would face immense confusion, write it off as an auditory illusion, or shudder in terror before walking away with a hurried pace. Even if she did succeed in communicating with them, it was difficult for the outer party to send back a reply in an orderly manner. People's thoughts were far too chaotic and disorderly. Why do I have a feeling that this guy is like somehow, because we've been dealing with, I'm thinking more Steins Gate than this, but there was a mention about parallel worlds, right? And about restarting the game. Maybe this is Takumi from like an older Takumi coming back in time to warn people about the world ending, and he can understand her, which we know he can. Yet the man's expression didn't change. He had simply answered Kozue's question with an incredibly short response. The heart Kozue felt through the man's voice was laden with a deep sadness. To her, it almost felt as if his heart was shedding tears.
君は剣を持っているね。
And he knows about the sword, too,
どう
huh?
してわかるの?
君のような子を
I have
他にも
known
知っているから。
other children like you. Hmm? Kozue raised her hands above her head and withdrew her sword where she stood. She thrust the end of the blade toward the man.
この剣が見えるの？
見えないよ。
じゃあどうしてわ
Okay,
かるの？
but Takumi can see the swords.
おじさんが悪い人だからだよ。すまない。
どうして謝るの？
おじさんのせいなんだ。
どうしておじさんのせいなの？
忠告しかできないから。動き出してしまったから。もうおじさんには止める術がないから。
じゃあおじさんを殺せばコズピーは悪くなくなるの？
その剣は君を殺す者にも守る者にもなる。思い出してごらん。空を見れば雲が、川を見れば流れがそこにあったはず。それと同じこと。その剣はいつも君のそばにあった。自分自身の心を見てごらん。そこにあるのがその剣なんだよ。
でも殺したいって願ったらこれが手元にあったんだよ。この剣はコズピーとコズピーの周囲にあるあらゆるものを殺すためのものじゃないの？
負の感情は否定されるものじゃない。人が誰しも持つものだからね。特別じゃないんだ。どう向き合うかだよ。目をそらしてはいけない。自分を否定してはいけない。世界は共造。君の心の中にある性は同時に負となりうるし、その逆もまた可能。
Everyone's talking in riddles.
世界が終わるのか、生き続けるのか、それ君たちだけなんだ。
In the end, Kozue had not killed the man. The urge had, for some reason or another, ceased to be as the man spoke to her. She did not expressively understand the meaning of the man's words, but even still she thought long and hard before eventually arriving at a single conclusion. The sword is me. If I look at it and don't deny it, it'll save me. And for that reason, Kozue fully cast her faith in her sword. I tilted my head, having just listened to Kozupi's story. Who the hell was that man she kept talking about? The homeless man carrying around a sign. Come to think of it, I felt like I'd seen him around a few times, too. Was it the same guy? I think I pointed him out, too. I'm like, there's a guy who always seems to be in the background, especially in the park area, who has a sign. He's just, like, following me around. What I didn't get, though, was why some random bum knew so much about D-swords. Or was I the odd one out? Maybe D-swords were actually huge in Japanese pop culture, and I'd just been living under a rock or something. Fat chance. I glanced over at Kozupi. Her face was so calm and peaceful, it was hard to believe she ever blurted out psycho things like wanting to kill people. She gently glided her fingers over the surface of her D-sword.
そういえばあのおじさん別れ際にこんなこと言ってたのら。君たちは特別な存在だ。中でも一番特別なのはその目、誰の目を産み落とした少年らしいんだって。
I didn't know what to say. What the hell?
西条くん、心当たりあるの？
いや別に。
嘘ら。心は正直なんだよ。西条くんは今ものすごーく関係ありますって考えてる。
Oh, god damn it. This is exactly what I was talking about. It sucks trying to think when she's listening to every thought I have.
なんか怖い顔になってる。その目、誰 西条くんが最初に考えたの？
I bit my lip, then stood up. My nosebleed had stopped, so I pulled out the tissue crammed into my nose. Kozue tilted her head as she looked up at me.
どこへ？
I'm going home. Even though my sides were still killing me, I ignored the escalators and elevators and took the stairs to the first floor instead. It was much easier to dodge the crowds and make my way outside that way. Teary-eyed, Kozue timidly followed behind me.
コズピー、何か怒らせるようなこと言ったかな？
I disregarded Kozupi's question. I was too focused on trying to sort out the thoughts in my head. That homeless guy she'd met, could he have been one of Shogun's comrades? What the hell was up with him mentioning whose eyes are those eyes? Who had he been talking about when he'd said, the boy who birthed whose eyes are those eyes? Me? That couldn't be right. I wasn't even close to special. Being a hero just wasn't in my blood. I mean, I couldn't even get my hands on a damn D-sword. I was just an average Joe, villager A, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Being special? No thanks, man. I'd rather not have another O-front breakdown in my lifetime. So that begged the question, who was that boy? I considered the real culprit behind the NewGen cases, Shogun. No way Shogun was anything other than an old man, but his voice and body made him seem like a kid more than anything. Pretty much everything about him screamed how abnormal he was, how he was someone special. 2 of the 6 current NewGen cases had whose eyes are those eyes appear at the scene of the crime in some capacity. I used that phrase quite a bit, but only ever in my own head. They barely even meant anything, so what the hell were they doing in all those places? Was there an actual reason hidden in there somewhere? One that would reveal why Shogun was so persistent in coming after me? Maybe the homeless guy had some clues I could work with. I imagined he was still somewhere in the city, carrying around his cryptic sign. I should look for him. So, I looked for him, then what? I paused for a moment, then shook my head in denial of what I'd been thinking. What good would it do to look for him? It was a whole lot more likely to just put me in harm's way. For all I knew, that guy was one of Shogun's minions, only there to lure me into some horrifying trap. So if I just cruised my way over to the guy, there was a strong chance it would just trigger another quest. I didn't know if I could handle that. I was already sick to death of all the pain and terror I'd been going through lately. And my suspicions didn't end at the homeless guy. I was even suspicious of Kozue. She didn't really have any reason to, and yet she was speaking to me with her inner voice. Why was that? Had she been under orders by Shogun to approach me, just like Yua? With her really unsettling stance on both attempted and actual murder, it was very possible she was an accomplice in NewGen. After all the mayhem at O-Front, Rimi had just up and vanished, and I hadn't heard a word from her since. Then Ayase had been hospitalized after her attempted suicide. Nanami was fine, but the 2 people on my side had still completely disappeared on me. Was there any guarantee Rimi would ever come back? For starters, was she really just taking time off from school? Granted, I only knew that because Kozue had told me, and I had no way of knowing if she was lying or not. All my hair stood up on end, howling at me that something was off. In the end, me and my world were all too empty, hollow. There was nothing left to believe in, nothing that didn't seem like a lie. Yeah, all this time she can hear everything he's saying. Kozue was standing right behind me. Her inner voice was as carefree as always. Her brutal-looking D-sword sat comfortably in both her hands as she carried it around. Then she cast an upward glance at me. I averted my eyes. Are you my ally or my enemy? Which is it? Did you come here to kill me? Just what? I can understand why Takumi is the way he is, but like he doesn't seem to realize like he is isolated because he's kind of isolating himself. He has people that are trying to help him and he just brushes them off and just writes them off as like people not to be trusted. Like the thing, he could reach out to Rimi. He has her number. He could reach out to Nanami. He's just choosing not to. Kozue suddenly yelped in excitement. Startled, my head jolted upward only to realize it wasn't me she was looking at, nor the person she was waving to. Oh, Sena, there we go. Sena Sean? Wait a second. Tracing the end of Kozupi's gaze, sure enough.
梢か
It was Aoi Sena with a D-sword to her shoulder. As she walked toward us, her expression made it clear her mood was just as sour as ever. I reflexively tensed up. What is Sena doing here? Is it just another coincidence? Or is it a calculated trap? Do these two know each other? If they did Kozue call her here? Are the two of them here to kill me?
だからそれは被害妄想だよ。
Yeah, but what's safe to believe in? Although it is true that no matter how many times I run into Sena, she's never tried to attack me. But it doesn't mean she's my ally. Besides, she's scary as hell.
セナさんは怖くないよ。
ちょ
Kozue, I could really go without the commentary.
怖い？何のことだ？
As I'd figured, Sena could hear Kozupi's inner voice too.
なんでもないです。
Kozue simply bathed in delight as I bumbled about. Facing the ground, she gently grasped the hem of Sena's clothes and smiled bashfully. The two were such an amusing combination, I felt stupid for getting so nervous. They're just like sisters. One the strong and firm older sister, the other the younger, more timid sister who loves her sibling more than anything. And on top of that, both of them have small breasts, so mega frickin' GJ there, nature. Good job, I'm guessing. Of course he's going into like the sister fetish. And they thought they were going to be able to tell his thoughts, or at least Kozue can sense his thoughts. Wait, shit, chill out. What if Kozue reads my mind again? If I'm not careful, I could easily die here. And isn't it a thing, too? Like, the more you try not to think about something, the more you can't help but think about it. How are those two related anyway? Are they classmates? Maybe not, since they're in different grades and all. Is there something connecting the sorts of people who have swords? Are the two of them Shogun's underlings? I put myself in the cat stance in case I had to escape at a moment's notice. What that specifically entailed was standing with my heels raised off the ground. That would allow me to speed away like a cat if the need arose. Maybe. I don't know. I'd seen it in some manga forever ago. I'm just imagining him like squatting to the ground like a cat, like on all fours, ready to run.
セナさんはね、コズピーが東京に来てから最初のお友達なのら。ね、ね。
Rather than answering, Sena merely glared at me. I'd figured she was about to lunge at me with that sword of hers, but that never happened. Calling her scary hadn't seemed to have pissed her off to that extent, at least.
小杖、どうしてこいつと？
たくみちゃんはクラスメートです。
Takumi Shan?
ほいでね、たくみちゃんはコズピーの剣が見えるんだよ。
それは知っている。こいつもギガロマニアックスだ。
Gigalomaniac? I've heard of a megalomaniac, but is that like a step above, like mega and then I'm giga? A gigalo what now?
ギガロマニアックス。理想度が見える人のこと。
Okay.
たくみちゃんもそうだよ。
A Gigalomaniac? Who in the world decided to name it that? Given it had a name at all, maybe these powers aren't all that uncommon?
あ、セナさんはガルガリ君買いに行くとこなんですね。
それは。
From the sounds of it, Kozue had read Sena's mind. Speaking of, I'd seen Sena eating Crunchy-Kuns in the past. With winter right around the corner, I wasn't sure why she'd be eating popsicles of all things. Guess she just really liked them.
ほいじゃあ、みんなで一緒に行きましょう。
Announcing that with her inner voice, Kozue clung to Sena and pulled her along.
たくみちゃんも早く。
いや、僕は。
I tried to turn her down so I could get out of there already, but... Kozue started tearing up almost immediately. Her teary eyes looked up at me as she silently pleaded with me. On top of that, Sena was glaring at me like she was ready to rip my throat out with her teeth at any moment.
ついてこい。お前にもおごってやる。
It looked like Kozue had scored a critical hit on Sena with her teary assault. Urging me to follow, I reluctantly trailed behind her, heading toward the convenience store right behind the police station. After buying each of us a Crunchy-Kun, we sat near the handrails in front of the police station nibbling away at them. While Kozue looked delighted as could be, Sena's air of indifference remained the same. I was stressing. I was going to say, like, am I not going to be worried about the fact I'm right near the police station? Am I going to run into the detectives again? I was stressing out. The police were right there on the station in front of us. And yet, despite that, they paid no mind to the fact that 2 people with me were in utter violation of the Swords and Firearms Control Law. The police were supposed to police people. The girls were right in their line of sight, but they didn't even try to arrest them. In fact, they didn't even care enough to slap us with a warning. Now that Kozue had pointed it out, I just went screw it and started eating my Crunchy-Kun. Though it was bothering me how people were staring. Though I suppose it was only fair, Sena and Kozue were cute as hell, and the very idea that 2 small-chested sisters like them were hanging out with an otaku freak like me, just sitting and eating Crunchy-Kuns together out in the cold, well, it was all pretty absurd. Maybe I was overthinking it. I couldn't block out the snickering in my ears. Was I just hearing things? Was it another auditory illusion? Or was it just Kozue laughing? I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to be looked at. I was afraid of people gazing at me. I probably should have worn a hat. Seriously, I really wanted to get out of here this second. I continued hurriedly eating my Crunchy-Kun so I could leave already, and every bite left my body feeling even colder. This was gonna give me diarrhea real bad later. How are these 2 not freezing?
で、小杖。なぜこいつと一緒なんだ？
こいつじゃなくて、匠さんですよ。匠さんが悪い人にいじめられてて倒れてたのら。だからコズピーが解放してあげたの。
So she'd been the one who'd looked after me?
ディソードを使ったのか？
殺したかったとかバキって。
Kozue was attempting to gesture wildly in an attempt to explain how things went down. But since her left hand was busy holding her colossal D-sword, she was just waving the other one around spastically. Which, of course, was the same hand that held her Crunchy-Kun. She'd only taken a single bite of her Crunchy-Kun before launching it into the air with a perfect arc. The popsicle soared through the sky before eventually landing smack dab in the middle of the road where it splattered to pieces. Kozue was on the verge of tears as she stared at what remained of her popsicle.
うかつな真似は避けろと言っただろ。
I find Kozue to be quite annoying. They're like leaning way too much into the cutesy little girl. Like, I find it a little grating.
アイスのことじゃない。ディソードのことだ。
Sena held out her half-eaten Crunchy-Kun to Kozue, seemingly giving up what she had left. Still a bit teary-eyed, Kozue smiled as she accepted the popsicle with a bow of her head. Color me surprised. I guess even Sena had her moments.
でも悪い人には罰ゲームをするのが当たり前だよ。
Speaking of those assholes, who exactly had turned them to mincemeat? Kozue or me?
たくみさんセナさんはねすごく何でも知ってるんだよ。理想度っていう名前もセナさんに教えてもらったのら。あとリアルブータあれれブッダ
リアルブート。
あ、そうそう。
The hell did that mean? I'd never heard of that before. It was just as cryptic as the Gigalo whatever thing from earlier.
リアルブートしてない件は誰にも見えなかったはずなのにね。
Okay, so real
セナ
boot.
さんにだけ見えてたの。
Okay, so can you like unreal boot your sword if you intentionally want people to see it?
理想度が見える人に会ったのセナさんが初めてだったんだ。その時はおひゃーって思ってなんで見えるんですかって聞いちゃった。ギガロマニアックスだからなんだって。
ギガロマニアックスって何なの？
さっき言ったのら剣が見える人だよ。
A bit more detail here, like how does that work?
ディラックの海に干渉できる力を持つ。
Oh my gosh, they are throwing a lot of stuff at me. Dirac Sea? A concept in quantum mechanics defined by Paul Dirac, an unobservable primordial soup of all elementary particles that is said to be uniformly distributed throughout the world, appears in the wave equation, Dirac equation of the whole theory, which ties together both quantum theory and the theory of relativity. Dirac defines the vacuum as a state in which negatively charged elementary particles are so tightly packed together, no more can be created. This is the Dirac sea. They kind of lose me. It's like with the Steins Gate, they throw like the stuff about like physics, quantum mechanics, all that stuff. I'm like, bleh. I guess you just kind of have to have like a very basic idea of what they're talking about. You don't need to really understand it.
それがギガロマニアックスだ。
Rather than Kozue, it was Sena who had answered what was on my mind.
ディラックの海。
Sena shot me a scornful glance as I tilted my head in puzzlement. The hell was that look for? Sure, I may look like an idiot, but I'm pretty damn smart when it comes down to it, you know. I was pretty sure the Dirac sea was a concept relating to quantum mechanics.
負のエネルギーでいっぱいに満たされた観測不能の境界面とかだっけ。
大雑把に言えばそんなようなものだ。そしてそこに干渉するための端末がディソード。ディラックの海に突っ込んだパイプの先端と考えればいい。ディラックの海とつながっているからディソードも負の物質で構成されている。無限に崩壊している存在なんだ。
Negative matter, matter whose weight is lighter than zero, impossible to observe. Each and every substance in the universe has its own minimum amount of energy it requires in order to exist and maintain stability. If the amount of energy falls below zero, however, it means the matter will continue to collapse infinitely.
だから普段は普通の人間には触れることも見ることもできない妄想のようなものでしかない。このディソードこそあらゆるリアルブートのためのショートカット的役割を果たす。ディソードとディラックの海とのチャネルを大きくすることでディラック方程式の空港理論によって対生成が起き
Oh, here we go.
粒子と反粒子を作り出す。
Oh my gosh. I haven't had any tips in a while. Now all the tips are happening. Elementary particle, the smallest unit of matter, but the definition of what constitutes an elementary particle is unclear. Certain elementary particles have a corresponding antiparticle with an opposite charge. And the whole theory presented by Paul Dirac, Dirac predicted antiparticles would be generated via pair production in the hole created at the vacuum interface. Pair production is a phenomenon where both particles and antiparticles are generated upon the collision of a large amount of energy with a nucleus or something similar. In Dirac's whole theory, this is when the vacuum collapses. Conversely, the collision of a particle and an antiparticle results in the annihilation of both particles. In whole theory, the Dirac equation discovered by Paul Dirac led to the baffling conclusion that electrons containing negative energy do in fact exist. In order to explain this, the whole theory was founded, a theory which served to reveal the existence of the Dirac sea. The Dirac sea is impossible to observe as a space consisting of matter infinitely collapsing into itself is not visible to the human eye. However, when a huge amount of energy is applied to the boundary of that space, the vacuum interface, the vacuum temporarily collapses, turning those negative electrons positive, and those electrons then pierce through the boundary. By observing the positive energy, one can prove the existence of the Dirac sea.
この粒子がギガロマニアックスが生み出す妄想、世界にとってのエラー。そのエラーを現実とするには作り出した粒子を他人のデッドスポットに送り込めばいい。粒子は即座に電気信号に変換され周囲の人間に共通の認識現実として成立する。逆に消したいときは粒子を送り込んだデッドスポットに今度は反粒子を送り込み追消滅してやればいい。
Right, I remembered Sena mentioning that before.
世界の仕組みは3つの数字で全て説明できる。0と1、そしてマイナス1。ディソードはそのマイナス1を生み出すためのショートカットになる。
This was all giving me a headache.
周囲の人間に共通の認識となると妄想が現実になるってどういうこと？
例えばお前が今手にしているガルガリ君、お前にはどう見える？
どうって水色をしたアイス。
その水色のアイスは本当に現実だと証明できるか？
I mean, what else would it be? It was a Crunchy-Kun. Anyone with eyes could see that, and anyone with a mouth could feel how cold it was with every bite. I would think that'd be a pretty obvious answer.
人は目で見たものを脳が認識して初めてそれが水色のアイスと理解できる。でも脳が本人の意識しないままに嘘をついている可能性だってあるんだぞ。脳が生み出した自分一人だけがそう思い込んでいる妄想かもしれないんだ。
じゃあどうやって現実だって証明するの？
他の人もお前の持っているものが水色のアイスであると観測すれば、それは2人以上の人間の共通の認識となる。お前一人だけの妄想じゃなくなるんだ。妄想を現実にするときにはそれを逆説的に捉えればいい。
To break it down then, a person's solitary delusion could become reality by forcibly showing it to someone, and this could be done by using particles created by a D-sword to attain mutual recognition, or something along those lines. Then did I have that power too?
コズピさっぱり。とにかくこの剣は普通の人には見えないの。
Kozue returned Sena's Crunchy-Kun, then trotted back toward the road. Then, in front of all the people walking along the road, for some inexplicable reason, she suddenly began whirling around her D-sword wildly.
やめ！
A shield in my eyes. So, those were her true colors. In the end, she was nothing more than a homicidal maniac. Any second now, the road would become a sea of blood. Anyone crossing paths with that colossal blade would have their body torn to pieces. If the police station right in front of us, they'd catch her in the act. It would be an open and shut case.
そんなことにはなってないよ。
Why was it so quiet? A whole crowd had just gotten mowed down with her sword in broad daylight, right here in the heart of Shibuya. And yet, there hadn't even been a single scream. The cops hadn't even intervened. I slowly uncovered my eyes. Nothing had happened. Nothing at all. Kozue, looking a tad embarrassed, was still brandishing her colossal sword. You would think the sword would have struck anyone nearby, or maybe a railing, or even the ground. But no, not a thing was damaged. If anything, the sword was passing right through everything, as if everything else was an illusion. Wait a second. Actually, I had that backwards. It was the sword that lacked substance. The people walking around us weren't bothered in the slightest. They couldn't see the sword.
ピンポンピンポン。理想度は妄想の剣なのだ。
Aise had said something along those lines, that the swords could only be seen by those who possessed the power. Standing next to me, Sena let out an exhausted sigh before taking another bite of her Crunchy-Kun.
あのディソードは今は小杖の作ったエラーでしかない。周囲共通認識はまだ成立していない。
リアルブートしたらみんなに見えるようになるのです。
Real booting. That would mean sending particles into the dead spots of surrounding observers, yeah? Not that I knew what the hell a dead spot even was.
ズシャーってしたり、ドガーってできるようにもなるよ。
Can you please explain with anything other than sound effects? Still, I think I got the picture. Slishy slash was probably for cutting, and smashy crash was for hitting? What was this girl going around cutting and hitting? Did Kozue seriously do such horrifying stuff like that? And what about me? Did I have the power to do that too? No, I wasn't special. I wasn't a Gigalomaniac. And in the end, I hadn't even been able to obtain a D-sword.
剣は見えたよね。だからそのうち匠さんも持てるの。
I'm telling you, it's no good. Even back at O-Front, it just didn't work. Sure, I did see a sword, but I had zero clue how to actually grab it.
どうやって手に入れるかっていうと。
Kozue peered at Sena, as if to urge her to do something. Sena let out another sigh.
バイオリズムの上昇によって中脳変影系ニューロンのドーパミンが過剰分泌されたとき、ディソ
neuron, also known as nerve cells, a type of cell specialized for information processing. Nerve impulses travel through these cells in order to transmit various types of information, making neurons quite similar to mechanical transmitters.
ードは現れる。それは危機的な状況や興奮、悲しみ、憎しみ、
Do you think?
笑いなど。
I mean, he was definitely in a highly agitated state But he just couldn't go through with it, so he just basically needs to be in another heightened state in order to get his sword.
ドーパミン分泌量が多ければそれだけ観測しやすくなる。
匠さん、そういうことなのら。
I've said this, I have a feel like I was like, I bet there's gonna be a moment, like a high tension moment or something when he feels like he really needs the sword, that he's gonna be able to get it. It was just absurd how wide Sena's knowledge was. She might very well be an outright genius. I mean, with explanations this detailed, you'd think she'd majored in Gigalomaniacology, if that was even a thing. For starters, I couldn't imagine there being any other girl in all of Japan who could spout theories and jargon off the top of their head to this degree. Where on God's green earth had she studied literally any of that? What was with all the mysterious characters accumulating around me? I was dying for an answer. You're in a visual novel, dude. That's what's happening. Thinking about it all just wore me out. It sucked ass, only half understanding what was going on. But I didn't have the strength to look into it myself. Because none of these people were normal in the slightest. Grappling with those feelings of bitterness, I took one last bite of my thawing Crunchy-Kun.
当たりだ。
It said win on what was visible of the stick. Kozue came back and peered into my hand.
匠さん、すっごいね。
大した運だな。
セナさん、自分も当たりが出て欲しかったって羨ましがってるのら。
そんなことは思っていない。
It's like the equivalent of like someone who buys a lottery ticket every day, never winning, and then someone like the first time they buy it, they win. She probably goes through so many of those popsicles every day. I doubted Kozue could be so easily fooled, given her ability to read everything on someone's mind.
セナさんはいつも当たりが出ないかなとワクワクしながらガルガリ君を食べてるのら。当たりを引いたのはどれくらい？
1割3分7厘。
She really had this stuff down to a science. Did she calculate all that every time she ate one? Finishing her Crunchy-Kun as well, she gave the leftover stick a quick glare, only to let out a quiet snort. She must have lost, or at least her face made it look that way. Alright, let's go positive for this one.
よかったらどうぞ。
Oh god, is he gonna have imagine like she's gonna be like, oh, I'm so thankful, what can I do for you? And then just getting, but you know what, it hasn't been like super sexual in a while. I think the last one we had was the one where like Rimi basically was hinting about doing stuff at like that record store. That was a while ago. I timidly held out my winning
他
stick.
人に施しを受けるつもりはない。私は自分の可能性を試しているだけだ。
でも本心では欲しいって言ってるね。
あげますよ。僕アイスはあんまり食べないし。
Sena pursed her lips and then she nervously accepted the popsicle.
ありがとう。
I was lost for words, astonished. I would have never imagined I'd ever get to hear Sena thank me. Likely unaware of my surprise, Sena glanced at me,
お前優しいな。
muttered those few words quietly, then immediately looked away. Was it just me or had she been blushing a little bit just now? Well, she'd given me an honest thank you, which was enough to make me reevaluate her a little bit. I'd originally just thought she was a scary and nothing else, but she actually had a cute side to her.
セナさんは今ので今ので。
Kozue spun around in place, peered happily at Sena's face, and then at mine.
匠さんのこと好きになっちゃったのら。
小杖、何をバカな。
顔がプッポーってなってるの。
うるさい、うるさい。
Oh, did she have any idea what she just said? The mother of all tsunderes, Blue-Eye June's signature catchphrase. I started to grin out of sheer glee, and Sena's finger shot in front of my face.
お前もニヤニヤしてるんじゃない。
I had never seen Sena act so adorably agitated before. I was starting to feel a bit mischievous, so I decided to test her, and then I just get cut to pieces.
ガルガリ君は好きですか？
悪いか。
どの辺が？
美味しいだろ。
それだけ。
Oh god, what you were pushing your luck, my dude.
あと、可愛い。
He's cute. While she was still sullen, Sena said something that was incomprehensible to me.
か
Had she just gendered a popsicle? Also, how could popsicles be cute or even uncute?
アイスがじゃないからな。
Oh, is it like the, does it have a mascot?
ガルガリ君が可愛いんだ。
Oh, she was talking about the mascot. Cute?
あのイガグリ頭が最高だ。抱きしめて頬ずりしたくなる。
This is all just an illusion, right? A delusion? She's not actually saying these things right now. The expression on Sena's face as she spoke reminded me of a maiden in love. Well, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
それよりお前、
たくみさんですよ。
たくみちゃんなのか。
違う。シャンはつけなくても。
名前は？
I had a feeling I'd already told her my name before. She'd probably just forgotten it.
西条匠です。
だったら西条、もうこれ以上エラーを作るのはやめておけ。
は？
なんで？剣は自分の心なのら否定しちゃダメ。コズピーはこの剣のおかげで助かったよ。
Saved? What had happened in Kozupi's past? This question tied in with her wish too, the one where she said she wanted to kill.
妄想を現実にする行為にはリスクがつきまとう。粒子と共に追生成される反粒子はディソードにストックされていくんだ。反粒子は数学的に言えば過去へ向かうものだから、ストックすればするほどギガロマニアックスには現在の状態とのズレが発生し、やがてその矛盾により存在としての自己崩壊へ至る。
In Japanese, please.
梢もあまりディソードを出すのはやめるんだ。普通に生活していきたいなら私の忠告を聞け。これはお前たちの命に関わる話だ。
It didn't look like Sena was joking. Then again, she wasn't the type to joke anyway.
ましてや西条、お前はディソードなしでリアルブートした。本来ならそんなことできるはずがないんだ。ディラックの海にはディソードを通してしか干渉できないんだから。お前は普通じゃない。奴らに目を
You
つけら
aren't
れてもお
normal.
かしくない。
奴らって。
ギガロマニアックスの力を悪用しようとしている連中がいる。
それって将軍？
知らない。誰だそれは。
Kozupi, did Sena just lie?
ついてないよ。
西条、将軍とは。
A sheer chill in her voice sent shivers down my spine. Naturally, I couldn't look her in the eye. She grabbed me by the chest, making it hard to breathe. Ugh, why did she have to be so violent? What had I ever done wrong?
そいつは40代ぐらいの男か。
違うよ。小さなじいさんだよ。
Sena immediately let go of
そい
me.
つもギガロマニアックスなのか。
わからない。でもニュージェネの真犯人だよ。
真犯人だと。
Sena placed her finger on her chin, then began to ponder something while remaining completely still. The air felt volatile. I was hit with a strange feeling of anxiety. Sena knew something. But what the hell did she know? Who were these people that were trying to abuse the power of Gigalomaniacs?
あ、そうだそうだ。3人で記念撮影しましょう。ほらあれ。
Suddenly, Kozue pointed to something as she spoke enthusiastically. She was pointing at the arcade next to the police station when it came to taking commemorative photos. This was where it inevitably happened. I like how they got the picture of the D swords in there.
たくみさん、ほら真ん中。
いや、僕は。
セナさん、横見てたらダメです。
私はこういうのは。
コズピーだって初めてなのだ。時々。
Without once consulting us, Kozubi followed the instructions on the screen and pushed button after button. And before Sen and I could get ready, mentally and physically, a voice came from the screen.
はい、ポーズ。パタッ。
First timers, Gigalomaniac trio. In the picture we had taken, neither of the D swords were visible. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. So we did get some answers, actually. Still very confusing, but it seems like we've got some allies. Kozue, or Kozupi, is now, seems to be like a more fleshed out character, and she's actually like joining us now. And Sena is also going to be hanging out with the Gigalomaniac trio, or whatever it was called. I love that. So it seems like I do have some allies. They're going to be teaching me how to get my D-sword, like how D-swords work. So in regards to like all the other stuff happening around me, still pretty vague, but like the whole thing about the D-swords, about delusions, that's been explained in more detail. Having Sena now like hanging out with her, it feels like I'll be able to get more information, and maybe the two of them will be able to teach me how to harness my D-sword and how to use it. And then like going to the like different powers. So I wonder if each character has a power other than being able to create D-swords and create illusions, where like Kozubi has her power of reading minds. So that makes me think, like, what power does Sena have? What power does Ayase have? And then the whole thing with Rimi seemingly working with Shogun and wanting to erase me, like, what the heck is that about? Still so many questions, but we'll have to wait another time to get some answers. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time, next week. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Revealing Storm, Lynn's VA, Kenju Storm, and iCognito.